Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the updated Speaker of the House news. We finally, for the first time in, I believe, almost a month, have a Speaker of the House. And I'll be just doing a brief video about it today. I don't want to talk for too long, but I do want to talk about and just mostly analyze what I think is going to happen, what this all means, and where we're going to go from here in light of the events that transpired yesterday. So, in case you haven't heard, Mike Johnson from the 4th District of Louisiana is the new Speaker of the House of Representatives. So he takes the position that was held by Kevin McCarthy for, I want to say 9 months. Yeah, 10 months, really. So obviously this is a big deal. Speaker of the House is a very, very big player in American government, arguably the third most important person in Washington behind the maybe the fourth behind the Senate Majority Leader, the President, and the Vice President. And obviously, there are, more important officials who work for Joe Biden or work with him in the, like Secretary of State administration. But within the country specifically for domestic issues, a Speaker of the House is very important. And so, this is a victory for Republicans that they're able to get a speaker through. I, for a second there, thought maybe there's just no end to this for the time being. Maybe they, go to recess and they adjourn and they come back and it takes them months to figure something out. That to me was a real possibility for a few days there, but I was wrong. Republicans did get it together in the end. And Mike Johnson, I think, is a good pick for them. He's very conservative, but he doesn't really have the rep that someone like Jim Jordan has. Again, for a few days, they really were looking for Jim Jordan or maybe even Steve Scalise, both of whom are very, I'd say Jordan specific, very well-known conservative kind of firebrand figure that is not super popular with it, to the majority of Americans. And so had Republicans, picked someone like that, Democrats would have had a much easier time labeling them as a right-wing party that isn't necessarily moderate or isn't representative of what the median voter thinks. And again, someone like Jim Jordan, not popular at all, makes it very easy for Democrats to kind of use him as a boogeyman. Now, in the case of Mike Johnson, he's not really that well known. I knew he existed before this. I didn't really know anything about him. I had to do a bit of reading for myself prior to making this video because he is, again, a very, very obscure figure. And even within the House, from his own state, the Republicans had a much more well-known person in Steve Scalise, who came in the 1st District, and he was the majority whip, I believe, under McCarthy. And so the fact that Mike Johnson's not even, and I think Julia Letlow, I know more about her than I do Mike Johnson. So the fact that, he's not even the first or second most well-known congressman from his state, which is a small state to begin with, that kind of says a lot about who he is and who Republicans are going to want him to be. So a lot of this comes down to, winning the speakership. A lot of it comes down to how you conduct yourself, I would say, or what you do within the House. Jim Jordan, Steve Scalise, Tom Emmer, they couldn't get through because they could not convince the 217 Republicans necessary to vote for them. They could not. And that's because, politics is petty, right? I don't like politicians in general, and this isn't a party-specific thing. I don't really like a lot of the, I'm not going to express my personal political views here, but I don't really like a lot of things a lot of Democrats do personally. I don't really like a lot of things a lot of Republicans do, not in terms of policy, but I think a lot of lawmakers are petty, and they don't need to be. And it kind of reminds me of like a popularity contest, like when you're 13 years old in middle school, because the Republicans had such a hard time getting someone new through, and McCarthy was even thrown out in the first place because of personal grievances from a certain wing of the party. And then they couldn't get, for 3 or 4 weeks there, they couldn't get anyone else through because of more personal, petty grievances that didn't really have to do anything with politics, but did have to do more with, do I like this person individually? And Mike Johnson was, based on my read of the situation, inoffensive enough to pass that test. Enough Republicans are like, yeah, I don't really mind this guy. I'll vote for him because it's better than, having the chaos that we have now. And that's a really, really telling thing because to be speaker, not only do you have to, be in line with the majority caucus in terms of ideology and voting record, you also have to be in line with enough people who like you and could see you as Speaker of the House. So I'm going to say this says a lot about the people that, run our country. And by that, I don't mean Republicans. Obviously, they do control the House. So they are objectively responsible for this situation. But it also says a lot about just politics in general, that we cannot, really get past personal grievances. And so in this case, it's the Republicans, but I want to make it clear I'm not being specific to that party. Democrats, I'm sure it would not be hard to think of times Democrats have let their personal, issues get in the way of their progress and productivity at Capitol Hill. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is let's talk a little bit about the electoral implications of this. Again, I think Mike Johnson's a good pick. He's not as well known as Jim Jordan or Steve Scalise, so I think Democrats are going to have a harder time labeling him as an extremist. Again, for years, Republicans were able to fundraise off of hating Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They're like, if you go at any ad for Republicans, even last year, but I remember especially in 2020, I would get ads all the time, and they would be asking me to donate money to them because, look, radical Nancy Pelosi, we got to get her out of power, or Chuck Schumer and the liberal Democrats are doing this. And so obviously it's a buzzword. Republicans do the same thing with Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, right? Like, Democrats do it. They say MAGA Republican, Joe Smith, we have to beat him, right? So both parties throw around buzzwords to attract, to elicit emotions out of voters that are on their side of the spectrum. But regardless, in the case of Mike Johnson, Democrats can't really do that because radical conservative, crazy MAGA Mike Johnson doesn't flow as well as it does with Jim Jordan or Kevin McCarthy. So that, I guess, is a win for Republicans. But this situation as a whole is a loss for them. I don't know why they ousted McCarthy. Wasn't really much he could do. He had a slim majority, and it's hard to work with a slim majority in general. And they did themselves no favors by extending this period of chaos in Washington for 3.5, 4 weeks. So I'm just going to say, I think this was a pretty big just misstep by Republicans to replace McCarthy in the first place. I think Mike Johnson, when we get more into his tenure or his speakership, I think it could be okay for Republicans, but for now they're in hot water, and it's a bad timing because the Virginia legislative elections are up in 2 weeks. We have elections in Kentucky and Mississippi. So I'll be clear when I say that I think this was a very bad situation for Republicans, but Mike Johnson being the speaker, I think is a better outcome for Republicans. So, those are my thoughts. It wasn't a super organized video. Definitely could have said a lot more here, but I just wanted to inform you all of what I think is going to happen and what I think we should be expecting. So again, if you enjoyed, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, comment down below what you want to see next, and I'll see you all in the next video.